Hello. Oh. Is everybody good? Can everyone take a seat? That'd be awesome. So just to start, before I introduce myself, there are no empty listeners in my sessions. Everyone is a participant. So I encourage you guys to raise hands when I pose a question, or be willing to share a little bit, and we'll go from there. So my name is Ben Wiebe. I'm originally from the US, but live in London, and my background is largely in film and TV, but I've run game campaigns and worked for the games mental health charity Safe in Our World, and really worked with groups like Netflix on impact campaigns, and trying to figure out how we can make our industry healthier, and how to build healthier environments in games. So if you will, I want to ask you guys to participate with me for just a minute. Can you close your eyes for just like 30 seconds maybe, and breathe and think about what matters to you most, what you would fight for, what you would protect. Could be anything, anyone, anything. I like it. The room is very quiet right now. All right, 10 more seconds, yeah? Okay, you can open your eyes. How many of you would like to share? Just one or two people, real briefly, what came to mind? What matters to you most? Any hands? No one wants to share? Yeah. So people and your cats, yeah? All right, how many find that relatable? Yeah? So how many, without having to share your personal answer, how many feel like your answer is some variable of that? It's people in your lives, could be friends, partner, yeah, even your pets. Yeah? Yeah. So just to share, every single room, and in several countries I've asked this question, and the answer is always the same. It's some variable of the people in our lives. And I love sharing that with everyone and taking you through that so that we all see that no matter what room we're in, what language we speak, what religions we practice, or none, we all have common ground. Yeah? Do you feel that a bit? Yeah, a bit. Cool. Okay, so now I want to ask you to also do something for me. Can you, and if you're not sitting next to someone, can you find someone just for a minute and introduce yourself? You can share just one little tidbit about yourself, but keep this in mind. This is not an order or a directive, but you have permission to be deceptive in what you share with someone. So just take 1 minute and chat with someone and just share something about yourself. And I'm not telling you that you have to be deceptive, but you are given permission to do so if you wish. Go. Yeah, go ahead. 1 minute. Don't be shy. You don't have to share super personal things, anything you want. Thirty seconds. 10 seconds. Three, two, one. All right. Can I get you back with me? All right. So without having to volunteer anything personal that you may have shared, how many people felt like there was any kind of trust with whoever you spoke to, and whether you know them already or not? How many people felt there was trust? Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, all right. How many of you chose to be deceptive in any way? Even if it's half-truths, no full-on lies. You could lie even in the answer to this question. It's true. Yeah, so a few of you chose to be deceptive. Okay, so I really want to jump into that. Is when we talk about our sociality and our discourse, not just in the game environments that we build, but also in our work culture, how many of you feel that starting with work culture, that you trust the environments that you work in to be candid, to share vulnerabilities, right? To just be open about the things you share? How many? A few, yeah. And on a scale, do you feel like it's a high level of trust, or just kind of surface trust? Surface trust? What is that? Sorry. That's like surface trust. How about deep trust? Deep trust? Okay. So some of you feel that you do already have a deep level of trust. And do you feel that, so for those of you who think that you experience a deep level of trust in your work environments, do you feel that that contributes a lot to how you're able to build environments for your players? Yeah? Awesome. How many of you feel like that makes sense? Like there's a correlation there, yeah? Between work culture and what we're able to actually build for our players? Awesome. Cool. So that's my whole point. Yeah, in really exploring this is with a lot of game companies, and it's not unique just to games, there is a real disconnect, especially in hierarchies on how we see that relationship, right? If you have a toxic work culture and you build an environment for games and you say, oh, but we care about you. We care about building a safe space. We care about giving you a refuge where you can escape or engage in deep play and role play and whatever it is, right? But just as we're talking about here, how many of your players trust that, even if you're coming from a genuine place? And so from a lot of studies I've done, I've engaged in like disinformation labs and game jams on social justice and stuff. A huge majority, the core audience of players they call them disengaged battlers in a lot of these focus groups that are on like disinformation. And that makes up a huge swath of our player base. They're predominantly the players that will play an hour plus whenever they do. They like immersive and adventure and story-driven games usually, but they also play casual games. And these people feel disenfranchised. They feel the lowest level of trust of any group, yet they play the most. Right? So a lot of you here answering these first questions, there seems to be a decent level of trust in this room, but the people you're reaching, a lot of them have no trust in any system, in any political arena, so they feel like their opinions don't matter. So if what you're giving them, even if your game isn't highly narrative, right, even if it's a very casual game, but what you're giving them is, this is a safe space for you to explore. It's a safe space for you to play. We're not trying to manipulate you, right? But even then, if what you're engaging with is people that largely feel they have no trust, right? How do we get them to become loyal to what we're giving them, right? To play more, to engage if we're selling them something, right? Do you feel that you guys have like a good understanding of the people you're reaching most? for the most part? Yeah, a little bit? Yeah, or like none of us seem very confident in how we recognize who we're really reaching. Right, when you guys make games, and regardless of what kind of game it is or what your roles are, how many of you feel like you're probably reaching people more locally versus people who could be anywhere? What do you think? Do you think you're mostly reaching people kind of on a regional level, or do you think you're potentially reaching people who could be playing from anywhere? What do you think? Local, raise your hands. Anywhere, raise your hands. Okay, yeah. So the more global, our reach is, and that's the great thing about games, is sometimes we have no idea how far the reach is on who our audience is. Then it just makes it harder for us to understand how to kind of gain back that trust once we've lost it, because we're reaching people from vastly different perspectives and different cultures, and things get lost in translation, even when we're making honest efforts. So I want to pose another question to you guys. When you ask someone, could be a friend, could be anyone, how are you doing? How's your day going? How many of you give a deeply rooted and honest answer? Right? Oh, it's amazing, I'll tell you all about it. Or, oh, it's terrible, man, it's like worst day of my life, I'll tell you about it. Like, how many of you actually feel like that question, how are you doing, is a real welcoming to actually like go deeper? You do feel like it. And do you volunteer that much information, or do you just say, I'm good? No, not great, and there's not much more after it. Yeah? So, can I get someone to volunteer who said that, who raised their hand on the first bit? If you feel like you give a deep answer, you want to answer? If you feel like you give a deep answer when someone says, how are you doing? Do you feel like it's because when anyone asks that, you feel that it is an open door? It's a genuine open door. So you're comfortable talking. Okay, so that's a good one, right? How many of you naturally feel comfortable talking when someone asks you a question, even if it's someone you know well? Okay, that's good. Do you feel like the people that you spend a lot of time with would answer similarly? Or do you think it runs the gamut? Yeah? Okay, so when polled, the majority of people do not feel that comfortable. They are usually feel like it's not an open door. They don't really have permission to be super honest. And it might be cultural differences too. I'm from the US. A lot of times when people ask that question in the US, it's not genuine. It's very much just a thing you say. Hey, how's it going? Nice to see you. And there's not really much of a follow-up. But my point to talking about this is that if what we're used to is not really going for the follow-up, then we stay on the surface, right? And if we can't get past that, then how do we get people to be curious? And what we want, right, is to encourage people to be curious, encourage our players to be curious, encourage our teammates to be curious, right? Without that, without curiosity, do you think we can have healthy discourse? Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we can either, right? So, so how do we accomplish that? So this is why I encourage you guys. I really implore all of you, especially at conferences like this, right, where you have a chance to meet people you haven't necessarily met before, to always go for the follow-up. Sorry. To always go for the follow-up in whatever you're asking. I think that presents a really genuine demeanor coming from you, and I think if we really try to, just establish that as a norm, then it lets people know we're willing to be vulnerable a bit, right? Even if they're not. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, so I want to talk about disinformation and misinformation a little bit. How many of you guys are familiar with these terms and the difference between them? Okay, how many know the major difference between misinformation and disinformation? Okay, just some of you. Okay, so I'll go through it. So for those of you who don't really know, so misinformation is when we spread information or we're receiving it, and there are inaccuracies, sometimes subtle, sometimes really big, but the intention of deceiving people is there's not an intent to deceive, right? It's like, oh, I heard this, that seems accurate, so I'll share it. I'll share it with friends, I'll share it on social media and whatnot. Yeah, it's you're not intending to pass on information that's wrong, right? But you've read something somewhere, you have trust, that's why I'm talking a lot about trust. And then it just, continues to get spread. While disinformation, there is a deliberate intent to deceive, right? There is a strategy behind that. And so it's really good for that to be clear to every one of you, because there can be a really subtle difference. And this is why I wrote that on the board and asked you at the beginning to give you permission to be deceptive, because being deceptive can also be really subtle, right? If you were going to, has anyone played Two Truths and a Lie or heard of this game? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, that's a great example, right? Because the whole point is to fool someone, right? You tell two truths, which are obviously true, and the best lie is a half-truth, right? Or something that might be 90% true. But you are doing it but it's a game, and so your intent to win is to deceive. And the best way to win is to be really subtle. If you say something really obvious, like when I play Two Truths and a Lie, my best one is, my name is Ben. I've lived all over, but I live in London right now. And I have glass embedded throughout my entire body. Which one do you think would be the lie? The glass? Yeah, but it's not a lie. I was in a car accident. I had windows smashed into my body. I do have glass embedded in it, but not anymore. So it's a half-truth, and there might not even be any more. So, right? So, but we all have something we can, right, kind of flip and make it seem like it might be true, especially if someone knows things about us already. And so when we're trying to reach our audience, especially people who feel disengaged, they sometimes can't tell the difference, and they're not really willing to do any homework to tell the difference, right? So just like people who have low trust, even though it seems like a lot of you have solid levels of trust, how many of you feel disconnected, though, or tired from things that happen in politics or being overstimulated by news and social media? How many people feel that that's tiring? Yeah. How many people might say it even makes you feel exhausted? Yeah. Exhausted is the literal term that comes up very frequently in these focus groups on the core game audience. They feel exhausted. So if they feel like you're giving them decision fatigue on how much they can trust about what you're giving them, do you think they're going to be inclined to do more homework to want to figure out if what you're giving them is a healthy thing, is a useful thing, whether you're manipulating them in some way? No. They're just going to take it, and if they get disappointed, they're going to be disappointed, and there you go, you just lost a potential loyal participant, just like you might have lost a loyal teammate. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the hard part is that a lot of game companies from the top don't really buy into figuring out what healthy policies look like. So if you want a team to be able to function the way a team should function, do you think it makes it better if you feel like you can share vulnerabilities with people on your team? Or do you think it's better if you're all brick walls and you don't share about any vulnerabilities, right? We're all fine. We can all handle a high stack plate, right? No problems. Deadlines, no problems. Do you think it's better if you don't or can't share any of that? That's vulnerability. Deadline's coming. What do you think? How many think it's better if you can share vulnerabilities? Yeah. How many people think it's better if you're brick walls? Good. Yeah, you're all paying attention. Yeah, it's so much better. But a lot of game companies especially, will say, we're listening to you. We believe in that. We have open door policies. Has anyone heard that term very much? Right? We'll say, oh, you can bring your concerns, you can bring your questions, to the boss or whoever it is. Even if it's a small company, big company, you don't have to have an HR department or whatever, but someone in charge. But what's the problem with that? Is there a commitment? Is there a dual commitment there? If someone says, I have an open door policy. It's kind of one way, isn't it? If you make a date with a friend and you say, let's do it Wednesday, 12 o'clock, that's a commitment, right? But what if they come back and say, maybe? Yeah, we'll see. Is that a dual commitment? No. You don't know for sure if they're coming, or maybe they don't respond at all. You know they want to hang out with you. You've set the time. But if they don't confirm it, that's not a dual commitment. So the whole open door policy is very that. You come, and maybe you chose the wrong time. Oh, sorry, I got a meeting. Or I'm on a call. It's not a good time. You said open door, though. You said I could come anytime. So what happens to us if someone says, you're all welcome. Bring your concerns. Be vulnerable. It's fine. We'll have a better team that way. And then you do that, and then you're met with a not now. It's actually not, it's okay later, but not now. How likely, and you can raise your hands, how likely are you to try again and go to their door again? Some of you? Yeah, that's only a few of you. How likely are you to not even try? Yeah. See? How quickly even a decent level of trust can get broken. Do you feel that? Sometimes it doesn't take a lot. It might have taken you a lot to muster the energy to be like, I don't think I can handle the plate. Or this deadline's wrong. I can't hit it with what we've got to do. That's better than over-promising, right? But if you do admit that, and the response you get is, even though you were given permission to be honest, right? That's why I love that word, permission. Once we give people permission, but then we deny them that when you take advantage of it, most of you just raised your hand. You're not likely to try again. The trust it's gone. So how do we get it back? How many of you are in leadership positions in the room? Even if you're not like a boss, but how many people have a team and you kind of manage that team or anything? How many? Yeah? So for you guys, does a lot of this stuff also resonate? Yeah? Yeah, when I talk to Unity has thousands of employees, right? They admitted, which is rare to get a big company to admit this, that 40% of their managers have never managed anyone before. How many are surprised by that? Okay. Not surprised. Doesn't demonize people in those positions, right? That's hard. Anytime you step into a new role, it's hard. But the fact that for any company, a lot of the people who are put in charge, don't necessarily have a track record of being able to do that. And then you're telling them, oh, but be vulnerable too, and then it will help your team. Versus, right? Don't. It's a tricky proposition. If you were stepping into a new role for the first time, and you are told, be vulnerable, share personal things, be candid. You don't have to share super personal things, but be candid. How many of you think you could do it? But would it be easy? Okay. I like the level of trust in this room. This is good. I wasn't expecting this. Most rooms I've talked about this, you guys have had the most amount of hands raised when we're talking about high level of trust. That's pretty awesome. Actually, I want you guys to feel good about that. Yeah, because it's not common. It's really awesome. So what can, like in any role, regardless of what role you have, I want you guys to think about what you can individually bring to the environments that you're creating, and whether that's in the games or the work culture. And I think part of that also just comes through sincerity, right? So when we talk about going back to misinformation and disinformation, how many of you get your information from many sources, not just one or two? Several. Okay, a lot of you, that's good. How many of those sources include like social media, YouTube, TikTok, that kind of stuff? Yeah? Are social media or YouTube sources a predominant source of where you get information? Okay. So that also happens to be the absolute dominant source of where that core audience of disengaged battlers gets their information. They absolutely have no trust in traditional media or what's now called like old school television. People don't watch traditional shows as much anymore. Yeah, so if you can relate to that, the fact that the core audience you're reaching also gets almost all of their information from feeds, from social media, from digital outlets. Do you know that traditional news outlets, like TV news outlets, have to go through a process of like an ethical process of vetting their information before they air it? And they have regulation bodies in most countries to correct misinformation if they get it wrong. But what about digital outlets? How many of you think digital outlets have the same requirements? Sounds like you know they don't. Now, so if you know that already, I think you can assume, and I don't like assuming without asking questions, but I think we can assume that our core audience also probably understands that too. And yet, they still choose to trust digital outlets where information is not vetted in the same way. There aren't regulation bodies to double check, right? Make sure you have lots of sources, or those sources are, I guess, ethical. But why do we trust it? So how many of you mostly trust the top place that you get your news from? Okay, so now only a few of you are raising your hands. So even the places we choose to go from, right? Because a lot of times information that shows up on feeds, it's seemingly random, right? It's not necessarily stuff we're actively looking for. Some of it is, right? But I'm talking about places you deliberately go because you know it's the kind of information you like learning about. It interests you. But so what you're telling me right now, for the most part, is that even those places you don't necessarily have a ton of trust in. At least not full trust. Yeah? Yeah. I see some of you nodding. Yeah. Are we okay with that? Or are we just accepting that that's the norm? How many are okay with it? Not even trusting the places we really choose. Okay. Does anyone want to share why you feel like you're okay with that? Go ahead. Sure. So, if everyone couldn't hear, she's addressing bias. Yeah? Is it kind of your main point? Yeah. We all have bias, it's true. Even if we act like good citizens or are even good journalists, we all have a bias, right? But how many of you feel like you understand where the bias likely comes from the places that you choose to get information from? Yeah? Okay, so that makes sense. That's a really great point. Thank you for sharing. If you feel like you understand the kind of angle or agenda those places have, then yeah, that can raise the level of trust, right? That's like saying, I know you're a liar, so I know you're going to lie to me if I ask you this question. So I know I'm going to think about your answer a little bit more because I already know where you skew, right? Like where your agenda or where your style skews, right? Just like if someone said if you've ever heard there's a riddle about a fork in the road, you reach a fork in the road, and there's a guy, there's someone blocking each side. One always tells the truth, one always tells lies, right? It's like you know what you're going to get either way, so you can kind of figure it out on your own. So the hard part there is, so thank you again for sharing, is that part about bias. We've become okay with knowing that information sources express that bias more openly, right? Journalists are now part of the story, right? There's more punditry than ever instead of people who are just delivering information and data and facts. How many of you feel comfortable with the fact that information is now muddled with opinions? Yeah, see now last of you raise your hand. Do you think it's harder to tell when someone is just giving an opinion versus giving you hard data within what they're talking about? Yeah. It can be harder because now there's strategies around that, right? Even in classrooms like this, business especially, how do you change your vocabulary and your verbiage around, right? Trying to make it look like you're an expert, just with a little bit of information. If you put an expert and an influencer on a panel, how many of you think that the audience polled after that conversation would follow the expert, knowing that they're an expert? And you're actually talking about the particular specific area that they have expertise in, versus how many of you think the audience polled follows the popular person? How many think the expert? How many think the popular person? Absolutely. Every time. So I want you guys to feel uncomfortable about that. When you say you feel comfortable because of bias, and we get to this place where we normalize the fact that we know people are giving us biased information. We know it's not completely honest. But the more we become okay with that, the less we're able to change our environments. How many of you hear the chatter in games, even games that you just play as a fan, as a gamer, and people express abusive behavior, and they say, "Go ahead, report me." Nobody cares. How many people have seen that? Yeah. We've normalized it. We've normalized the fact that once that bias sets in and we become okay with it, we know that most of the time people aren't willing to do the work to go back and reset it to make it better. Because it's hard, right? Is it hard to admit mistakes when we've messed up? It's hard for me too. Even just saying those words, I was wrong. How many of us have had a partner, and our partner's like, "You were wrong," like, admit it. And it's really hard to just say that, right? It means we have to show humility, look like an idiot, maybe. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. So then we wonder why the systems that we, function in, the environments that we build, whether it's work culture or in games, it's hard to go back once we've established something where it's not honest, it's not vulnerable, and our players feel that, and they'll feel it so much that then the disinformation, the misinformation, abusive people, right? Even people who aren't necessarily abusive or toxic outside of that, you still see it expressed because they feel like they're given permission. Yeah? So I don't want you guys to feel too uncomfortable. But part of why I love these kind of conversations is that I think it's really healthy for us to get comfortable being uncomfortable and asking that more of people. Because we can't fix things that we don't acknowledge. How many people agree with that? Yeah. I want you to close your eyes for 30 seconds and just think on all this and take a breather. How much time we got? How much time? When you go back to whatever work environment you're in, how many of you feel confident to bring this up? Yeah? Does it make you feel more confident to bring it up just to engage in conversations like this? Yeah? Does it? What would make it more comfortable and easy to bring it up? That's okay. So you think, so for you, the easy bit is working with people you already know well. Yeah. It's a good reason. How many of you do get to work with people you do have already a good established relationship with versus constantly working with new people? Some of you, maybe half. Do you feel like it makes it easier just because you might be around people you already know? Does it make it easier? Does it make it really easy? When you bring a tough conversation to your best friend, how many of you, and I'm sorry if your best friend is in the room, how many of you feel like your best friend will go there with you? Hey man, I just lost someone really important in my life. They died. Can we talk about death? Can we talk about that? How many of you feel like even your best friend would go there with you? Have a real conversation about it instead of, I'm sorry for your loss. That's good. Thank you for admitting that. But do you think it would take a lot to kind of encourage them into the conversation? What about if they're not your best friend, but someone you do know, a teammate even, not necessarily someone you hang out with, but if you shared something very personal, it's obviously going to affect your work. Do you think they would go there with you? Now there's fewer hands. Why? 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 Why does it require a best friend only to go there? Something that's clearly going to affect your mind, affect your ability to focus, ability to deliver, especially if what you're making is like lighthearted and fun. How many think games are fun? How many people think making games is fun? Yeah. I hope everybody still raises their hand. I hope that's why we're in this business, right? Is that we like playing games, I hope. We like making games. It doesn't have to be fun all the time. Making things is hard. Delivering things is harder, right? But in the end, we get to create things that are fun. They're enjoyable for people. And then get to watch them experiencing that, right? Even people you might know, your friends, family. Your parents might even play. That's awesome when that happens, right? But if we can't get people more comfortable, right, with even something as, and I'm sorry if death is a trigger for anyone, but I do like bringing it up because a lot of people do. Just like we were talking about, how many do the follow-up on how you're doing. But on these kind of questions, majoritively, a lot of people just kind of move on. Oh, I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry you lost someone. Actually, let me ask this. Well, if anyone has experienced this, a loss like that, how many get the response, I'm sorry for your loss? Not the loss. We've all lost something, right? When that happens. Yeah. But the usual go-to is, I'm sorry for your loss. You lost someone. Not everyone lost someone. Why not? Why doesn't it feel like we all lost something? Right? Getting people to relate. That's what I'm getting at. Do you think it's hard to get people to relate to something? If you've experienced it, maybe they haven't. Yeah? Yeah. But why? Do we have to experience something ourselves to understand it? I mean, a lot of things we learn in classrooms like this seem like hypotheticals. What if this scenario happened? What if this scenario happened? Doesn't necessarily mean it's happened to us, but we're told we should understand it, right? In order to be better at our jobs or be better at making healthy environments for players, do you think we have to have experienced all of these things we're presenting to them? No. No, but we have to figure out how best we can relate. If someone does bring something tough to you, says, hey, I'm going through this tough thing, and I don't know what to do, and maybe it's a work thing, maybe it's a personal thing, how many of you feel like the appropriate response or your go-to response is, I can relate? and to give an anecdote on how you can relate. Even if you can't. The hands went down. Yeah. But we do it. A lot of us do it because I've done it too, right? We feel like that's the appropriate response, yeah? To try and find a way to connect and say relate. Does that feel like our go-to? Trying to meet people where they are, even when it's not genuine. But does it feel disingenuous to do that to someone? To say, I can relate, even if you've never been through this thing they're talking about. But because you're just trying to emotionally connect with them and say, like, I'm here with you. How many people feel like that's still okay? Yeah, it's a harder question, right? Yeah, but a lot of us do it anyway, even in subtle ways. So I'm not demonizing that practice, but I just bring it up because I think a lot of us are taught that the goal is to try to connect, even if we don't know how. Yeah? Even if we might feel inept, incompetent, familiar with imposter syndrome? Yeah, that word gets thrown around a lot. That's exactly what this is. Right? We're told, even if you feel like you don't belong, or you should know things that you don't, skilled at things you're not yet, but kind of fake it till you make it. It's the same thing. So when it comes to like skills and how we work, we're told that that's okay. But when it comes to personal things, we're told, oh, that's disingenuous. Don't pretend like you can relate when you can't. That's not fair. But in order to make it in our work, if you want to keep your position, if you want to keep moving up or whatever your goal is, you got to. Do people feel like there's a difference? Like in the work, we're told do whatever you can, just keep moving. Don't admit to things you don't know. Just find a way to figure it out. Do you feel like that's kind of the message that you're given? So this is interesting. You guys are very different than anyone I've had this conversation with. Because in places like the UK and the US, when I've done this, there is a cultural difference. A lot of people there say they feel overly pressured to say they can do things they can't do. Right? Oh, if I'm challenged to do something, or I'm given a task, or someone brings a hard vulnerability to me, don't turn them away, or don't say you can't do it, or don't say you don't know. So I'm really encouraged that you guys seem to have a healthier perspective on this. If someone does bring a question like that, or a task to you, and you don't know how to do it or how to answer, how many of you feel comfortable saying, I don't know? Wow. That's really good. Because that's also not always easy. Because in some cultures, in some places, or some companies, people can make you feel like you're an idiot for not knowing something, right? That in some way, because they asked, that means you should know. And so if you don't, that's what's bad. Versus saying, I can, when you know you can't. Maybe you can learn it, but to admit it and be honest, seems worse than just going ahead and maybe breaking something, right? When you don't know how. After talking about this kind of stuff together, how many of you feel like you could present something to your teams or whatever work environment you have, even if you work by yourself? How many of you feel like you are more likely to want to think deeper about the kind of narratives that you're telling, the kind of characters you're writing? Yeah? Does it make you want to put more nuance and perspective in the kind of games and stories and characters you're writing? Yeah? How many of you work on narrative games with a lot of story involved? Just a few. Yeah. But you know that even games that don't necessarily have a lot of narrative in them can also be utilized in different ways through socials. I've seen games that have no real story arc and narrative in them have like animated shorts and shows and stuff built out of them, where all of a sudden they do. They have characterization, right? They have backstory and all that. So even something you're working on, that doesn't necessarily have a big character arc, you can still find ways to play with it, and there's lots of opportunity in the industry to do that. So it doesn't mean that that's not available to you to think about that, right? Even in casual games. Do you think that the same kind of nuance that we're talking about in how your work environment can be translated into how we write characters? Yeah? I've seen great characters in games that the characterizations start out harsh. And by decisions that you make, that character can become more empathetic, more understanding, gives agency to your player, makes their decisions, when they feel like their decisions in real life don't really have much value, no one really cares, but they like playing games, this core audience that I've brought up. One of the biggest reasons they like playing games is that they feel like the decisions they make there actually have some agency. The choices, they get to make choices that actually have ramifications. They can affect things, change things, solve things. Whereas when they do it out there, they feel like whether they get it right or wrong, no one really recognizes them. Their skills, their perspectives. How many people in this room feel like even if you are really knowledgeable about something, it's hard to feel like that's recognized in places out there? Yeah. Do you feel like that's part of what encourages you to work on games? That we get to make new environments that can be recognized. Yeah? Where we can get to challenge people to make choices and decisions that are completely theirs. But when we go out there, sometimes it can feel like it doesn't matter how smart we are or how much we know. If we don't feel like, that we're valued, that our vote counts. So I want you guys to think about that core audience. And whatever you're working on, whatever you make, even when we have conversations, because I guarantee you there's disengaged battlers here today. They make up almost 40% of people who play games. So Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for having this conversation with me. Do you feel like you get to explore this very often? No? Yeah. I hope the rest of your conference is engaging. I hope this encourages you to have more deep diving conversations with people, especially just in how we make games, the things we think about when we build environments, or just how we get on with teammates, the kind of questions we ask, the kind of empathy we give each other. Yeah, so thank you guys. Yeah. Does anyone want to ask a question? Yeah? Yeah? Cool. Oh. Oh, you got one? Okay. Cool.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry if we were a bit silent on the thing. Personally, I was kind of lost in thought. So, thank you for bringing these thoughts to us. I was wondering if you sometimes look at this conversation, have this conversation through the lens of mental health and neurodivergence, because that can change the way we look at trust and the way we relate to each other a lot, especially in teams, like within teams.
Yes, absolutely. So I myself am neurodivergent, both genetic and acquired neurodivergencies, and probably have a low level of trust too in systems. So great question. Yeah, I think about it a lot because a lot of times people with, well, not a lot, most of the time, people with neurodivergencies and people who have real mental health concerns feel the most ignored and their needs ignored, in these conversations. And they don't see their perspectives brought up in games as well, within characters. Because what's considered normal is that people with mental health conditions are liabilities, not assets. So when we talk about normalizing things, that's been a normalized element for people with real mental health concerns, and mental health concerns have only gone up. So it needs to be a huge part of the conversation. Yeah. So it's a great question. So when I talk about vulnerabilities, that's really the biggest focus on what I'm talking about. Is we don't often know who is going through something, who's battling something, who might have even acquired a condition. There are a lot of conditions that are trauma-induced and acquired conditions, meaning you weren't born with it. So they can be acquired even as an adult. So oftentimes we have no idea who are around who might have things that they're carrying with. So, yeah. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the wonderful talk. One big takeaway I had from everything you shared with us is that opening with vulnerabilities and being open and sincere and candid about your own stuff and the thing you're going through is going to foster trust within teams and within social groups. Would you also say that it could be the same for, we're talking about game making, but about a company to actually be much more genuine with the general public and actually foster this kind of openness about the business practices or what's happening inside the company, of what is the health state of the workers, and would you say that doing that openly, like openly developing the game and being sincere about what it is and not just use devlogs as a marketing tool, would you say that it could be a way to rebuild the trust that was lost in the gamers?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I have a good example of that, and I will name names. So when I was doing work for Safe in Our World, for the Games Mental Health charity, I talked to, two of the groups I talked to were Ubisoft and EA. And it's no secret that both of those companies have had huge toxicity issues. they've had high-level executives get reprimanded for toxic work environment, sexual harassment, like you name it, right? But to your point, when I talked to them, and my perspective representing a charity was not here to demonize. I'm here to like get dirty, like get in the trenches. Let's build solutions and make healthier environments. And Ubisoft said, "You're right. Like we're trying to figure it out. How to be preemptive versus reactive. We built something called the Good Game Book together, and they clearly haven't fixed everything. That's not always the point, right? Or it's not always easy to fix everything. But at least their response wasn't to go away. Where it was, no, you're right. We have a lot to fix, and we're trying to figure out how to do that. And they were putting money into research and projects, to try and figure that out, and not always be reactive on how to solve issues with that, both in their games, especially on how players engage together, and their workforce. But when I talked to EA, I literally gave them the verbatim same conversation, and they said, "How dare you? We don't have a reputation problem. We're not going to have this conversation." And they just basically slammed the door. They didn't want to have anything to do with it, right? So it does change, company to company. Some are willing to accept it when you tell them, like, this isn't just good for, like PR. I mean, this will drive more loyalty, right? You make a higher trust environment that's where people feel like you actually care about them. And then if you can do that does trickle down into the game environment where your players actually feel like, oh, I can sense the culture of the company is getting better. I might be more willing to play more, maybe even spend money in the game. I know as a player, I feel that. If I feel like the company of the game I like playing is like, right, that they don't care, I'm like, well, I'll play, but I ain't spending money, right? So it's very company by company basis, but without bringing up the conversation and being very direct about it, some aren't willing to go there, and some are like, you're right, let's figure it out. Thanks, man.
So that's the last time, we don't have more time.
One more, or? Okay. Thanks, man. Thank you, guys.